It's Tuesday afternoon at 4 p.m. in Switzerland, and it's Space Café WebTalk time. Our Space Café WebTalk 33 minutes with Nikolai Khlystov will begin soon. Thank you for joining us today for our talk titled Stepping Out of the Cradle Through Multi-Stakeholder Collaboration. As always, we appreciate your participation and ongoing feedback that is very valuable for us and help us to improve. Special thanks today to CISAT Davos 21 for supporting our Space Café today. Do not miss the first European executive event dedicated to cybersecurity in the space industry on the 17th to 19th of March. It's fully digital this year, and register for this event at cisat.eu. I'm Thorsten Greening, your host today and publisher of SpaceWatch.Global. We are a Switzerland-based online platform for information in and about space and new space activities in a geopolitical context. I know many of you are already familiar with our website, our bi-weekly newsletter, and the daily one. And of course, the Space Café podcast. Our new episode 21, released last week, features Dr. Neve Shaw, a wonderful story to listen to. We also keep our fan shop open online for you to support us actively and become a Space Watcher. Edition 1 has cool items for you, your friends, and the ones you love. Your support is needed to keep our work alive, and we do that for you. If you missed any of our previous web talks, we have an archive available on our website in the event section and on YouTube. We host our Space Café web talks live weekly, and this is already our 46th edition today. I'm super excited to have one great space ambassador and somebody I admire for his outstanding work on my show today. With that, a very warm welcome, Nikolai Khlystov. Nikolai is the lead of the Future for Mobility platform in space at the World Economic Forum in Geneva. Nikolai leads the various efforts on space, like the Global Future Council on Space and the Space Sustainability Rating. He has supported the socio-economic panel of the Hague International Space Resource Governance Working Group and has appeared on a number of space-related panels as ours today. Nikolai is a Russian-Canadian and first became interested in space in his last years of university's bachelor's degree. Happy to have you here today, Nikolai. Please tell us more about your way into space. Or did you have the big dream to become a cosmonaut, or what was it?
Thorsten, thanks very much for having me. It is a real pleasure, and I know your show, there are so many terrific speakers. So I'm quite honored to be here. Space is a wonderful sector, I think, to be in, and I think a lot of your listeners and viewers would agree. I got excited about space, of course, as a child, but I think the moment that I would look back on is really the moment in my university when I was sort of getting to my fourth year in my degree, and I saw a telescope on the roof of one of the science buildings, and I said, I have to figure out who runs that. How do I get access to it? How do I start viewing the stars, right? And basically that led me on a small journey through a couple courses on astrophysics in my last year. And of course, by no means I can claim to be a real scientist, but of course that gives you a certain appreciation for how things work in the solar system and beyond, in our galaxies, in the universe, and all the unanswered questions rather that humanity still has in front of us. So that's a little bit been, I think, my entrance. And of course, at the forum, I've been working and helping bring together different stakeholders, different experts in the space sector from around the world for a number of years now. Mm-hmm. And through that, we've been able to have wonderful discussions, address some really interesting topics, build that community, but also actually have some real impact and deliver some wonderful projects.
So, but I mean, I talked about your role in the forum, but why is the World Economic Forum interested in space? So, and what is exactly the role for you? Maybe you can elaborate on that bit.
Yeah, of course. Well, the World Economic Forum is an international organization for public-private collaboration, right? So we're a neutral platform based in Switzerland, but of course we have offices now pretty much in all key areas of the world, and we've been operating for over 50 years now. And for all these decades, the forum has shared and talked about and promoted the idea of multi-stakeholder collaboration. And it's exciting that finally, in the last year, certainly, but I think probably more so in the last 10, 20 years, this notion really started to catch on. And we see that through a lot of discussions now about different ESG metrics, corporate governance, right? ESG is environmental, social, and governance frameworks, right? So we're excited that, this is finally really coming to the forefront. And how we address some of the big global challenges. So why the forum and space? Well, I think space has a lot of tricky challenges in front of, the sector has in front of itself. And I think, addressing some of these challenges will take all the different stakeholders working together, public, private voices, government, businesses, right, civil society working together. So, I think the forum lends itself as a great venue to address some of these challenges. We won't solve everything, of course, right? But I think we can support some of the formal processes that are happening at the international level, at the government level, and bring these different stakeholders together.
No, that's fantastic. Last week, I had the pleasure to be one of the moderators of the sustainable or space sustainable logistics forum in Lausanne, and that was wonderful, managed by the team around Emmanuel and colleagues. So we talked about, are we overdoing sustainability? So what was one outcome of this discussion was that everyone said, hey, there's this sustainability rating, space sustainability rating, what you guys run, and we can find on your website. And it is perceived as, hey, now we have a solution. So maybe you can help us to verify that and to make a reality check where we are with that. So please, just can you start with summarize the intention for the SSR space sustainability rating and what is the latest update?
Of course. No, well, thanks for bringing it up, Torsten. Well, first of all, the space sustainability rating was actually one of those ideas that came out from a term of Global Future Council back a few years back. So it's a concept that was developed in that group, but now it's actually it's a terrific collaboration of several actors. It's not just the forum, but it's European Space Agency, MIT Space Enabled Research Group, University of Texas, as well as Bryce Space and Technology. So, and we're actually coming to the end really of the development stage. It's I think we're approaching 2 years now. And it's really been a wonderful collaboration, but it's tricky to really get something which can address the key notion, and the key notion we're addressing first and foremost is the topic of debris and space debris mitigation, and how do operators and launch providers look at that and how they address that issue through the emissions. And it's not been easy, so I think that's why it's been taking a little bit of time to actually get it finished. But we're coming to the end of it. We're also in the process now of selecting the final operating organization that will run it, will operate and run it, and hopefully grow it and develop it going forward. So I think we can look over the next 2-3 months to some exciting announcements, public announcements, vis-a-vis these two areas, finishing it and some public announcements and what's its final state and who is actually going to be operating it.
I mean, we will not dig into that, and I try to get out from you who might be the winner. So, but taking that aside, so what are the key areas of sustainability at the SSR concept, or what areas will you approach with this? And yeah, what is the ultimate goal? Is it like a TÜV certificate, or so? Maybe you can compare it a bit for us.
Yeah, sure. Well, I won't probably get into too much technical data, but I think the easy way to understand it is to say, how do we influence good behavior, right? Obviously, there's some regulations and some guidelines that exist in the space debris world, in the space operations world, right? But actually, we took the approach of sort of coming from the grassroots level. How do we encourage good behavior, right? And so this notion of peer pressure sort of was brought up, and we certainly have a number of different ratings that promote good behavior on Earth, right? So LEED certification for sustainable buildings, or the energy ratings for your appliances, right? And essentially, the rating is meant to be a voluntary rating, sort of a carrot approach. So to say, well, you should meet certain criteria, a holistic set of criteria, when it comes to your mission debris mitigation approach. If you meet that certain basic level of criteria, you get a basic rating, right? And if you don't, well, you don't have a rating at all, right? And then it should be aspirational. So to really get the top-notch marks, you would really need to do everything that's really required of you, and probably above and beyond, right? And it should really be tough to get, because the idea is to promote and to push operators and launch providers to really drive and approach sustainability with really a big focus, right? So that's a little bit in a nutshell the overview of it. I would just say that we'll look at also different parameters as part of the rating. So how trackable is your spacecraft? What are the characteristics of your spacecraft? Where you're launching to? How good are you about sharing data about your mission with different stakeholders? How good are you about sort of communicating your different collision avoidance maneuvers and what goes into that? So it's a very holistic look at all the elements that could influence whether or not you produce or could potentially produce debris. Of course, post-mission disposal. So how quickly you get your spacecraft out of orbit at the end of your mission is important as well.
Okay. I mean, I saw today on, I think, LinkedIn on an infographics of ESA, or created by ESA, about the various orbits and how long it takes for the space debris to come down, if not pushed down. And that was really frightening, to see that a cycle like going back to the Roman Empire is what we can do from 1,500 kilometers or so. That's the time it takes, so multiple hundred years. And I think that we have to act. And I mean, I've done it yesterday, or I said it yesterday in my short promo for our event today. It's time to act. I think we all have this feeling. But coming back to SSR, how tangible, how can you declare, or when can you declare SSR a success? Are there KPIs? And who do you think will adopt it? I mean, I think a few of them will be already in the group creating it, but how you go out. So, and I think with all of these regulations, the most important question: who will monitor it? Who will enforce it?
Yeah, very obviously important questions, Thorsten. And one element I think I'd like to add, and I think I see that actually coming through one of the questions, is the SSR is not the solution, right? I think you were introducing it as such, but it's not a solution. It's not a perfect product that will solve the debris issue. Of course not. It's meant to be a complement to other efforts, whether it's more formal policy efforts or whether it's other sort of best practice behavior or standards that operators may have, to really encourage to do more, right? And to put the sustainability and debris topic a little bit more in the forefront when operators or launch providers consider the product, right, and how effective it is and what it does and its cost, right? Can we get sustainability up there really, and for the broader public to see that easily and transparently, right, without trying to understand all the technicalities, right? It would be a simple rating in the end. So it's supposed to be a supporting mechanism to all the other efforts, right? So that's I think an important point. I think the longer term, of course, the idea is that it grows, right? It expands. It maybe addresses other topics and other sustainability issues in the space domain. So we've been asked the question of is emissions from the rocket launchers part of that? That could be something that could be considered in the future. What about beyond Earth orbits when we start exploring, and landing on the moon or mining asteroids, etc. Could it be expanded to that in the long term? Of course, it could be. Whether frequency issues, could that be added as a separate criteria, as a separate sort of standalone related rating? Perhaps it could be. So certainly scope for growth. I think we try to address the most present issue of debris with it. It's already been tough to try to get at it. In terms of how do we measure success, that's a good question actually for us to consider. I would say that already the community is aware of the tool. So I think already there's a notion that it's forcing stakeholders to think through that this is coming through the pipeline, and already we hope starts impacting their behavior already now. Of course, we'd love to see a considerable amount of stakeholders and operators and launch providers take it on and try to get a rating and hopefully get a good rating. But of course, if we get anything close to 40-50% of different stakeholders in the community, who are operating spacecraft, maybe even 25-30%, I think that will be already great, because that's already starts to become a critical mass. And frankly, in the future, you could go and say, as a customer perhaps, or as a policymaker, or as an insurance provider, you can say, well, this set of operators or stakeholders has a rating, and this one doesn't, right? And if it becomes, you start to have a choice actually, and you can start to make a choice not only on price and delivery of your payload or service or whatever it may be, but actually also on sustainability. So that's, I think, really exciting. That's what I think we can see and expect.
Okay. I mean, Valentin pointed it out with his other question here, the relationship to the LTS, the long-term sustainability guidelines adopted last year by consensus in UN Copius. So, and could your KPIs are used for monitoring the deviation to national space law in respect to the LTS? So it's one of his questions. Maybe that fits in perfectly.
Yeah. Well, it is one of the aspects, one of the parameters that goes into the SSR is how do you approach different standards and different guidelines, right? So if you sort of hit the different criteria, if you're doing everything you should be doing, you will get the marks, essentially. That's maybe the short answer. And if you maybe go above and beyond, right, some metrics, like, for example, like how many years it takes to get out of orbit, perhaps you get a little bit better marks there, right? Because of course, as I think many on the show know, this issue of how quickly you get out of the old spacecraft that's out of fuel, that's inoperational, out of orbit, that actually impacts quite significantly the future debris growth.
Okay. I mean, if you say, hey, you want to have 30% are on the table, or with that, or it's just one person today. You have to ask, or to make it 30% from the beginning, just as a minor detail. But not just talking about Elon, but how do we balance the growing interest and demand for space versus sustainability? I mean, that was one of the questions we tried to answer last week, or in Lausanne as well. But I think that's a question what is still open, and I haven't found somebody with a precise and a good answer on it.
Well, you're asking the tough questions, Torsten.
Sorry for that.
And I think that's the point of the show, right? I don't know if I can give you the perfect answer to this tough question, but I think this is why international collaboration in space is so critical. This is why we need to have everybody at the table talking about these issues together, right? Because otherwise we just won't be able to address them. So, I think we can all agree that space brings tremendous benefits. I can certainly say that, I'm happy that there is growth in the space sector. We know about, the technology transfer that can happen from the sector that has already happened, right, over the past decades. All the benefits from Earth observation, all the challenges that can address on Earth, connectivity that could be brought to remote places. I think that's very clear. I mean, one element I would mention is I think the statistic is about half of all the climate variables can only be measured from space. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's pretty astounding. So the benefits I think are clearly there. Now, of course, we have to do that in a sustainable way, because otherwise, if we don't, look, space is a finite resource, even though we may not think about it as such. Certainly, when you look at orbits, yes, there's a lot of kilometers there that mm-hmm. For an orbit, for a satellite to go around, but it is limited, right? So Absolutely. you can actually fill it up, right? And if you think about a geosynchronous orbit, that's also a very valuable orbit, right? A number of others. So we do need to think a little bit about how we utilize these resources. I think there's been some good practices, certainly for the geosynchronous orbit in the past. And so I think we have to sort of think how we certainly approach LEO, mm-hmm. low Earth orbits. So these are the orbits, obviously, that are a little bit closer to us, under 2,000 kilometers. The International Space Station is in those lower orbits. But also beyond, right? I mean, moon is big, but it's also, it's a resource. It's a finite resource. There are a certain number of landing sites which are interesting. So look, I think you're right. We need to be cognizant of how we utilize this resource, but we need to look at it together, right? We need to jointly say, and ask those tough questions. Who can have access? What are the rules, and do it together, because if we don't, we just won't be able, nobody will able to really win, I think, in the long term, if you think about it holistically.
I will come back to moon and beyond in a bit. My last question to not finalize, but to move on then from SSR. How can the civil society contribute to the dialogue?
Well, civil society is critical. I don't think there's another way to answer that, right? For us at the forum, at the World Economic Forum, it's one of the three key pillars. It's business, government, civil society. And so we've always taken that stance. So to solve any big challenge, I think you have to have all three voices in the room. Mm-hmm. And of course, civil society represents different voices in and of itself. But they bring perspectives in a way of broader society, of broader communities that are not maybe professionals, that are not working in space sector, whether on the industry side or maybe in policy, but are affected by it, right? And will be affected by the benefits or by lack of those benefits that space sector growth and exploration will bring. So, and I think the other critical point about civil society is that, if you don't have the people who are not directly in the sector on board, right, we'll risk sort of repeating some of the mistakes that I think we've seen here on Earth when you talk about inclusivity, right? We have to expand into space, not just, we've spoken about sustainability. Obviously, safety is critical as well, but also in an inclusive way. So civil society is critical for that. That would be my view, and I don't think there's any way around that.
Okay. I mean, we are, as SpaceWatch.Global, we are on a mission to include all voices into the space dialogue, and so for us, it's also a very important part of our work and educate, to create awareness and to reach out with all these topics that impacting us at the end. And I'm just picking up on Kevin's question, because that goes really well with the next one I have in mind. I mean, moving ahead from SSR can be seen as just a part of space situational awareness, space traffic management. I mean, these are very high up in the agenda in Europe, in the US, at the moment. So what has the forum to offer in those areas?
Yeah, so I was just also looking at some of the good questions. Yeah, I mean, look, it's when we, I mean, the lower Earth space is I think is of primary concern right now, right? And so we talk about lower Earth orbits and some of the issues there. When you, I think, look beyond the orbits, right? There are lots of other exciting, obviously, questions. Obviously the last couple of weeks has been filled with exciting Mars announcements and multiple missions that have reached Mars. We address the topic of space exploration in the Global Future Council on Space, but I think there are other questions, and there are numerous, right? When you talk about resources, distribution, when you talk about actually, who owns the rights and how do you share those rights, and is it first come, first serve, and how do you actually deal with that? I think we have to start looking at these questions, whether at the international level, right, at the government level, which is critical. I think we do need to get to some kind of, I don't know if it's going to be perfect alignment ever, right, of how we approach space exploration and resource utilization. Perhaps that's maybe a little bit too wishful thinking, but I think we absolutely need to have an agreement or some kind of at least understanding of common basic principles of how we explore the other planets, and how we, if not perfectly, work together. I would be an optimist. I'll say that's still possible in many instances, but at least have common principles that we abide by. And if you don't share everything perfectly all the time, you share some basic elements in terms of safety, in terms of sustainability, and work together on that. So that'll be my quick answer to that. But of course, it's a huge other topic as well. But look, we're going to see some exciting discoveries and on exploration side and exciting milestones, I think, this century. But I think even sooner than that, over the next 20 years, I think there'll be exciting things to come. So, but we have to talk about these things now. One aspect you mentioned in the introduction is the Hague International Space Resources Group. So that that's just one effort to bring different stakeholders together and put forward some basic principles, or at least questions that you need to address, not just from the legal standpoint, but also actually looking at some of the technical safety challenges, but also socioeconomic elements when it comes to resources question. And that's going to be a big question. We need to start looking at it now and putting forward these ideas and bringing all the stakeholders, with us together, so we don't end up having completely diverse and diverging paths that will be beneficial only to very few, and that won't be great for everybody else. So.
I take your point that you moved on from the space traffic management, as that was the core in this previous question, but boldly jumped already to the beyond NEO, beyond our orbits around the Earth to Moon and beyond. And I mean, you mentioned the Hague Working Group, but their work is finished now, so it's done. So what comes next? I mean, there was no, in my opinion, even being also part of that or a member of that, there is no successor to keep on talking. I mean, there are the Moon dialogues on the Open Lunar Foundation try to engage in this dialogue of governance, of policy, of solutions for the moon. And we have, of course, Artemis. So how does WEF continues in this current debate, or where are the current debates, and how do you engage with them? And by the way, one question, correct me, there's not such a huge team at WEF that cares about space. Am I correct, or do you have an army of people supporting you?
That's a good question. Well, no, I mean, you always want to have more resources focused on whatever challenge, right? We're an international organization, so of course, resources are always limited. Well, look, no, let me come back to the important point of space traffic management for a second. I realize we're sort of running out of time soon. I think the STM, space traffic management, is the big question now, right? I did want to touch briefly on the exploration topic, but the STM is critical because without having the rules of the road in LEO, certainly, or in Earth orbits overall, we just won't be able to achieve full sustainability, right? And if you don't have sustainability, you don't have space activities. So we do need, with this growth in population of active satellites, on top of a growing debris field, which with better technologies we can monitor more and more now, we have to be able to identify what's going on, who is flying where, and actually have some rules of who can go into which slot. Again, I think there's some good practices maybe in GEO, but of course LEO perhaps arguably could be a little bit trickier there. So I think and the forum there could really help. I think as a neutral platform, and sort of, if we come back to my initial introduction of the forum, as a neutral platform, we can bring the different stakeholders together and support international processes, which can be tough when you're addressing this issue, which can get sensitive. So I think that would be my short answer on STM. Hopefully we'll be able to play a role there as the forum, but I think it's critical we address that.
I know one of the areas that is very close to your heart is capacity building, is STEM. So all what we discussed before can't be continued without a high amount of very highly skilled people. How can we address capacity building on space-related topics? So from your point.
Yeah, and I think it's a great way to close the conversation, right, as we get to the end. I think so. STEM education is absolutely critical. I think we need more people working in the space sector, right, as it's growing. Right? There is a big shortage of talented workers. But I think the way to do it is you really have to target younger generation and generate that excitement and build that excitement when they're in school, when they're in university, just like it happened with me and numerous other individuals. It's such an exciting field, and I think there's so much promise in the coming decades that space sector can bring. You have to talk about it, you have to share what it can do. And there's so many fields that are opening up now, right? As the space sector grows, it won't be just very specific engineering and robotics roles. It will be other, roles in AI and digital, right? But inside the space sector, not AI or programming on Earth, right? There'll be more and more cross-industry possibilities. So I think we have to communicate that better as a sector. And I think there's a great path for us forward, but we need to be mindful about it. And again, I think the way to do it is through collaboration, is through international dialogues, and through getting to some best practices, getting to some understandings, and if not formal rules. Otherwise, look, I'll maybe end with a quote of a great Russian philosopher, mathematician. I think it was actually a little bit in the title of the talk, Konstantin Tsiolkovsky, who said that Earth is the cradle of humanity, but one cannot stay in a cradle forever. And I think that's absolutely true. We need to, as we grow as humanity, we need to step outside our house, step outside our cradle, into our garden, into our neighborhood, explore. That's what we humans do. But I think it's critical we also, clean our house and protect the house and ensure it's still there, right? So I think that's the balance we have to achieve, and obviously that's also the big issue for this century in terms of climate change. So that's how I would sort of say that.
Great final words, and I would like to keep them as final words. I mean, stepping out of our cradle in a time of lockdown sounds a bit weird. I know, but I know it's the last one is a very short one, but it has a big potential in it. How can we come from pure talks, what we are doing right now, to actions? What is needed what is needed today to really change something? Any good advice on that?
Well, I mean, that's always the $1 million question, right? Is how do you get impact? How do you achieve impact? I think you have to sort of put forward proposals which are tangible. You have to have dialogue, but you have to quickly from dialogue move to proposals and work with stakeholders who want to get things done. And I think, we have a great track record at the forum at doing that. But there are certainly, other stakeholders who manage to get to have progress on certain issues, but you have to work together, right? If you don't work together unilaterally, you can't really achieve anything. And a lot of these questions are tough. We won't solve all of them. We won't solve some of them now. We might solve them in 5 or 10 years only. But if you don't sort of chip away at them and work at them, you won't get very far.
Thank you very much. I mean, I'm afraid we have to come to an end of our 33 minutes format, even so I would like to enjoy the continuity of this inspiring talk with you. And I mean, we will have a chance to capture a bit in the follow-up here, but rest assured we will continue following the space sustainability issues in our future Space Café web talks and on our magazine, because we think it's needed. We think it's important. And again, I would like to thank SciSat Davos 21 for supporting the Space Café today. So do not miss the first European executive event dedicated to cybersecurity in the space industry from 17th to 19th of March. I mean, it's another absolute critical area. And I know other parts or other departments of WEF are looking into AI in cybersecurity and all this work. And I think we have here an event that matches both. And so feel free, all of you, to register at scisat.eu. We will start our Clubhouse lounge in a few minutes for those that like to talk with us or further and are on an iOS device. Just search for Space Café at 4:45 p.m. CET today, and we still experiment with this new platform. The next weeks are quite filled with pretty cool new events. Just a quick run through that. Next week, 2nd of March, I will talk with Blaine Corcio, the China space guy, about China's space activities. 4th of March, we will launch our Space Café Germany by Andreas Schepers, and his first guest will be Dr. Walter Pelzer, board member of the DLR. A day later, our Space Café Russia, run by the wonderful Elena Morozova, will start, and her first guest will be Dr. Olga Wolinskaya. So the German and the Russian Space Cafés are in local languages. So for those that want to train their German or their Russian, feel free to join. And no, we don't have a chance to translate them simultaneously. So we are still looking for solutions, but we don't have them. A week later, On the 9th of March, I will talk with Shelley Brunswick from the Space Foundation on STEM education. We will pick up on that and go deeper into it. And 2 days later, on the 11th, our next Space Café Black Ops by Ralph Thiele is planned. All these events are online on Eventbrite already. As always, we would like to hear your feedback, so please check in with us on Twitter, on Facebook and LinkedIn, and don't forget to sign up to our daily and our bi-weekly newsletters. If you like to treat yourself with something special, become a Space Watcher today. Your support will help us. Take your credit card and visit our fan shop at shop.SpaceWatch.Global. And I know, but we need your support to continue our work. Thank you all very much for your interest today, and thank you, Nikolai, for the inspiring talk and being my guest. And thanks again to the entire team behind the scenes for doing their great job week by week. Again, I hope you all will stay safe and stay healthy.
Thank you, Thorsten.
You're welcome. Thanks for joining us. I hope to see all of you next week. In the meantime, visit us on our website, follow us on social media, and hope to hear from a few of you in Clubhouse or at Clubhouse in a moment. Don't forget, to become a Space Watcher. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.